Hi there, guys. We're going to talk about an M95 Boer Mauser carbine today. Not a rifle, but a carbine. We've discussed these before. There were only 7,000 odd carbines ordered. They were all ordered by the ZAR, not the OVS. And they were mainly ordered for the ZAR Staatsartillerie. That's the state artillery of the ZAR, South African Republic, or Zuid-Afrikaanse Republic. Now, this rifle, this carbine, is featured in my first book. It's got a very, very neat carving here to P.P. Meyer. But I'll tell you an interesting story to kick off with. About 20 years ago, a friend of mine in Brisbane looked at the newspaper and saw an advert for World War II K98 Mauser carbine. So he answered the advert and went along to have a look at it. And to his surprise, he didn't find a World War II carbine at all, but this Boer Mauser. So he bought the M95 carbine instead of a World War II K98 that he thought it would have been. So that's the initial story. P.P. Meyer, as I said, is in my first book. I did quite extensive research at that stage, which is around about 2003, 2002, and all I could find was a certain gentleman called Petrus Philippus Meyer, and he's actually featured in my first book. Now, I couldn't find anything more about the gentleman apart from the farm that he reckoned he lived on, but the interesting thing was he put in a claim for damages occurred during the war. And very briefly, I'll explain that. The Boer War ended on the 31st of May 1902, and there was a peace signed at Vereeniging. The British agreed to pay £3 million to try and compensate the Boers to rebuild their shattered republics. Because during the war, Lord Roberts initiated a scorched earth policy. They started farm burning. It was continued by Kitchener. And by the end of the war, they'd burnt around about 30,000 Boer farms. They'd also taken all the cattle. The sheep were either captured or killed. Poultry, pigs, you name it. So the country was laid to waste. All the corn was burnt off. It was really a scorched earth policy. So these poor Boer farmers had to go back to absolutely nothing and start all over again. So this guy puts in the claim, and the claim was for £187. He ended up getting £95. We'll show you this claim. He claimed for a wagon, a second-hand wagon. He claimed for a cow, and he claimed for 2 horses, one of which died on commando. So obviously they'd gone through, or the British officer had gone through this and pretty much divided in two, and he ended up with £95. So that was the first P.P. Meyer. However, as years have gone by, more and more have appeared on the internet. We've now got POW rolls, death rolls, etc. What I managed to find was P.P. Meyer, another P.P. Meyer. And this gentleman was Petrus Paulus Meyer. Now, he was actually an artillerist in the ZAR Staatsartillerie. So it was a fairly small body of uniformed men. They were very well disciplined, as opposed to the normal Boer army, which was a citizen army. They were mainly farmers. These guys were a crack military organisation. They were pretty small. They had very good equipment. We've spoken about this before. They had Krupp guns from Germany, Creusot guns from France. They had the big Snyder Creusot siege guns as well, which they used. And all the men were given these carbines. Now, I think there's a very good possibility that P.P. Meyer may have been the original owner. I've only found 2 men with the initials P.P., and being an artilleryman, it could well have been himself. Now, just a few things on the artillery. I'd like to thank a guy called Zetef du Plessis in South Africa. He has gone to a lot of trouble, and I've got a little display here of medals to both the ZAR Staatsartillerie and also to the OVS artillery. I've got 2 Boer medals here, and I've got badges applicable for the OVS and the ZAR. They're all named, these medals. I've talked about this before. And as I said, these gentlemen here, these are the medals that they won. So this is, I think his name is Tenniswood, Artillerist Tenniswood, and this is Artillerist Adrian Nell. This guy is Kalitz in the OVS artillery, and this guy is O'Reilly, who is an officer, and we've spoken about him before. Now, we're also going to show you an interesting Form B. I mentioned this when we spoke about the Boer medals. This is to a Sergeant Major. This is a Sergeant Major in the ZAR Staatsartillerie. His name was Ackerman. And the interesting thing about it, apart from his rank of Sergeant Major, is on his Form B, which we'll show you, he basically took part in every single battle in the colony of Natal, as well as many others. So he was at the original Battle of Dundee, he went on to Ladysmith, he went on to Colenso, He was a Spionkorp, you name it, he was there. So a very interesting Sergeant Major Ackerman. That's about all we can tell you today, but I hope you enjoyed the short story about a Boer Mauser carbine, 2 potential owners. I'll never really know who it was, but tend to think it might have been the artilleryman. Thank you.